Welcome to Creative Bath, the podcast for creatives. I'm Jamie, a designer, and this week I got to sit down with my friend Brandon Heredia. He is a video editor, content strategist, and social media manager. He's had a really interesting path in life and is a really grounded person. I have to say, I was in a bit of a funk this week, and listening through our episode just kind of brought me back to earth, and I really enjoyed talking to him. So I hope that you enjoy listening. So, hi, Brandon. I actually don't know how to pronounce your last name. Heredia? Is that how you say it?
Heredia, yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, awesome. So, you and I met at a film premiere from, I think it was Yes Theory for Project Iceman. And I kind of went to that event knowing that I would probably make a friend. And you were sitting right next to me, and we had the opportunity to chat. And I think we connected on just kind of having non-traditional paths and travel and finding spaces that make yourself uncomfortable in order to grow. And I saw that you have been working with clients and doing different, I guess, video work. So can you describe what it is that you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is good to see you again. It's been a little while. And I think that video premiere that we went to was like all about getting uncomfortable and like doing things that are a little bit outside the box, right? That was the whole vibe of the video premiere and the community that showed up. So it was really cool to meet you there. And I always felt like it was a little bit, I don't know, serendipitous. Like we were both kind of off to the side and just happened to like make that connection. But I am doing freelance work,
Hmm.
freelance video work, and I've been working with different clients, mostly just editing, at least right now, it's editing long form video into short form video. And I've kind of been doing that on and off for years, really. In between different jobs that I've had, I've done freelance work, photography, videography, video editing. And in the last year or so, I've really gone into kind of a more nomadic lifestyle, I guess. So I've gone back into freelance video editing a little bit more heavily, and it's been really nice. It's definitely helped to like bring about a lifestyle that fits me a little bit better. And it also has a lot of challenges too, but it's been really great.
For sure. So I guess I'm curious how you started like doing that craft, or how did you learn like the skills of the trade?
I learned video editing pretty much through YouTube and through trial and error.
Okay.
I think for years I've been on YouTube just creating things for myself, kind of as a side project or a hobby, in some ways, like a personal diary, I guess. And so I've been just kind of practicing that skill for a long time. And when I needed work that could allow me to travel a lot and be very flexible, that was just an obvious route to go with.
And I think if I remember correctly, you were in the real estate space or like business management, and you made the pivot to doing something more creative. I'm curious what that experience was like.
Yeah, I used to be a property manager. So I managed commercial buildings, residential buildings as well. Very different world compared to, let's say, like a video editor or photographer or videographer. And I did that for, I think it was 4 years, 5 years. That was kind of the first and only, I don't know, traditional career type of thing that I've had, like an office job type of vibe. And it really naturally flowed into video editing right when I decided to leave.
Mm.
So the quick story was that I did this for a long time. I realized that that career path had a lot of really good opportunities. It was a really hard decision to make, but I realized that it wasn't a good fit for me. In large part because it wasn't a creative field. And I didn't know that I was somebody that needed things in my life to really bring creativity. But at this inflection point, I realized that I did, and I made the tough decision to leave. I kind of took a hiatus from work for a little bit, got another job, and just kind of doing warehouse type work. And then eventually, this company, I was always in touch with my boss. He's a mentor to me. So they reached out again and asked if I'd be willing to come back
Mm.
because they were in this big like transition period. And I guess they needed somebody that kind of knew the ropes already. So I reluctantly went back, but at this point, one thing that I was very proud of was I had the wherewithal to tell them like very upfront, I appreciate you as as people. I had a lot of good experiences with this job in the past, but I don't think I'm a really good fit for it. And it's not something that I want to do long term.
Hmm.
So I was very upfront about that. And the old version of me would be very hesitant to basically say, I'm just not, I don't think this is good for me. You know, when somebody's offering you a position, they're offering you a job, they're offering you money. But with that, I said I'd be willing to do it for 6 months.
Okay.
So I'd be willing to help them through this transition period, and then that would be it. So I went into this last little bit of working with this same company with that in mind, that I just do it for 6 months. And when that 6 months ended, instead of just simply leaving and saying goodbye, they offered me kind of a new role that they had never had before, which was they wanted to start marketing their business a little bit more. They wanted a social media presence. So they said, what if we create this role for you where you can create some video content for us? And of course, we'll pay you as an independent contractor.
Hmm.
So after that career change, it went really smoothly into video editing, and they became my first paid client for video editing.
Okay. It sounds to me like, you're doing well enough at your previous job for them to want you to come back. And I think I've talked to a couple of creative people who have had the experience of being able to do a different kind of job and do it well, but still kind of feel like there's something missing,
Mhm.
or still feeling like you, I don't know, have some creative things to explore. And I'm curious, I guess, if there was anything that signaled to you that you needed creativity. Like, was it like a feeling that you had, or you saw other people who were doing the kind of work that you wanted to do and you felt jealous, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think one of the big triggers to that realization was realizing how much time and energy I was putting into creative things outside of work.
Mm,
So my work as a property manager was very much all about leases and inputting data into software. And then, of course, like taking calls from tenants and very admin oriented tasks, right? Like maybe you could find ways to insert creativity there, but it's admin work. But realizing like when I would get off of work or on weekends, like how much time and energy I would put into writing YouTube videos or creating short form content just for myself, just for fun, not huge expectations for any growth, but it was just something that I enjoyed doing. And with that was always a little bit of video editing too. So I think just realizing how present that always was, despite having, this career path, this office job, I think was a big thing. And then I think I remember something a friend had told me one time, which was that always stuck with me. This was years ago, but he said something along the lines of creativity being kind of like a muscle,
hmm.
and it atrophies when you don't exercise it, right? So just like with any quality or skill in life that adds a bit of happiness or adds just a different dynamic to your life, the idea was that it's important to keep flexing that muscle. So that just always stuck in my head. And I think when I was sitting at an office job and contemplating if it was the right path for me and if I was even good at it,
Hmm.
that quote or that idea was always kind of in the background. And I felt like that was a good slag of sorts to get my attention, was just like having this thought always floating around.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say is that in that particular job as a property manager, it required a lot of organization.
Hmm.
It required a lot of constantly talking on the phone and getting things done and just like very hustle oriented. And yeah, if you can just imagine somebody constantly taking calls and like solving problems, right? And I realized after a lot of kind of challenging reflection that that didn't really fit me very well. I realized that I'm not a super organized person.
Hmm.
I don't like to be like constantly talking on the phone.
Mm,
I like a lot of alone time, a lot of time to just kind of sit and think and maybe like grab a piece of paper and write. And those are things that I naturally gravitated towards, and they just didn't fit into this sense of like working an office job and needing to hustle.
yeah.
So once I finally started to admit that to myself, which was a big challenge because who wants to admit to themselves, oh, I work really slow, I'm not organized, I'm kind of messy, and I don't want to handle like a barrage of tasks every single day. If you went into a job interview and said those things, like nobody, it seems like nobody would want to hire you, right? So once I became honest about that with myself, and this job really helped me reflect on that, was a time when I realized, like, yeah, I guess some creative thing in my life is really important, and maybe I should lean into that more.
Okay, interesting. I definitely connect to kind of finding a creative career that I guess fits my personality more. I was interested in doing psychology or nutrition, and I changed my major a few times, and I had to admit to myself that I'm a bit of an obsessive person. So, like in
Mm.
design or creative stuff, I will look at the small details and think about it, and it'll sometimes keep me up at night, or I'm really interested in solving these problems. And I think thinking about nutrition specifically, I would start obsessing over food or people in a way that I could tell wasn't going to be healthy. So like it's interesting kind of being honest with yourself when something is or isn't a fit for you. But you mentioned that you are kind of in a more nomadic space. And I think when we met, you had gone on a couple of adventures, had some life experiences. But I'm curious about how, I guess, if there's a revolving door between your travels and your inspiration from culture and challenging yourself by living in different situations and the creative work that you do they kind of, I don't know, help one another? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it totally does. Right now with freelance work, I would say it maybe a little bit less so. Like my freelance work is helping either individual business owners or organizations, like nonprofits, for instance, is one organization that I'm working for now, which helping them take their content and do whatever editing they need to be have done. So whether that's long form content like this, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
or taking long form content like this and chopping it up into short form pieces. That I would say is a little bit less creative. It's more just direct, like this task needs to get done.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of how travel and being nomadic has played into creativity and video for me specifically, I would say a little bit on the freelance work and a lot on the personal project work.
Got it.
I think, like for instance, my YouTube channel that I work on as like a hobby has been very much informed like creatively by my travels and culture and exploring and just being nomadic. Yeah, that's had a huge impact on it.
Okay. And I also saw that you posted a couple of videos about a blood clot that you had, and like I think you have some content around health, and I guess I'm curious to dig into that and how that has kind of, I don't know, maybe changed your outlook on life or changed your approach to creative storytelling or anything like that.
Yeah, the blood clot thing was, I've had one, I think before I met you back in 2017.
Okay.
And at that time, I thought it was just a one-off thing, spending a lot of time in my car camping, living in my car for a little bit. And so once that got healed, I thought that was the end of it.
Hmm.
And then I had one again recently last year and found out that it's more of a genetic predisposition to
Oh.
having blood clots. And so that I started to kind of share my thoughts on that
Hmm.
online and kind of use it as a little personal diary of what was going on. That led me to one of the main clients that I'm working with right now, which is a nonprofit that is advocating for blood clot like awareness and treatments and things like that. So that was really nice. And then other than that, in terms of informing my life and my outlook on life, I think that also informed things quite a bit. It kind of just put life into perspective in a sense that it's so, I think we all intellectually know that life is can be short
Mm.
and it can be very fragile. But having something happen directly to you or to me really made that less of an intellectual concept and more of like a real thing. And so going through that, I think one of the results of that is just this, I guess, taking pressure off of myself to need to have that traditional career path. It's more about realizing how fragile life really can be, and because of that fragility, like that it's okay to lean into non-traditional paths, and
Mm.
it's okay to lean into your strengths, even if those strengths don't necessarily seem like they'll pay you right away. So for instance, like I can easily get an office job, right? I had a very easy path to an office job that had opportunities to climb ladders and things.
Hmm.
And then having this blood clot thing, which by the way, the first time I had it, I was also at that same office job. I was a property manager the first time I had it. I think the big perspective push that it gave was if life is so fragile and things can be just so dramatically shifted in a moment, do I want that to happen while I'm sitting at a desk
Mm,
and at a job that I'm not particularly great at? I'm just doing it because it pays and I have access to it. Or if life is so fleeting, should I be pursuing something that is actually aligned with who I am and what I want? And I think for me, the answer was pretty clear that it's the latter, you know?
yeah.
Plus, with me specifically, it's a blood clot, right? So those can be induced or exacerbated by sitting for long periods of time. So, I remember telling somebody in my family, like, if something were to happen, and I've gone through a lot of health anxiety recently, which is a big inspiration of the content that you were talking about that I've been making.
Hmm.
If something were to happen, do I want to be sitting at a desk doing that? Or traveling the world or like going to some place that sparks my imagination. So yeah, with the blood clot thing specifically, it was like I don't want to be sitting at a desk all the time with your traditional office job.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I guess when you're sharing these experiences online, they're pretty vulnerable, right? We're kind of getting into life or death kind of territory. To me, it seems like it comes pretty naturally for you to be vulnerable online or to the camera. And I'm curious if it's ever hard to share those kind of more personal experiences, or if I guess my notion is right and it comes pretty naturally to you.
That's a really good question. I remember having a conversation with a friend, and she was saying that her sister is similar, where she's like, it's ironic because person to person, she's very introverted and she doesn't want to share too much. But on the
Mm,
other hand, she's strangely willing to share everything online. I guess it kind of comes naturally to me. It just feels like the right thing to do.
mm.
I mean, there's a lot of things in my life that I haven't talked about online. So
Sure.
there's a lot more vulnerability that could be put out there, I suppose. But yeah, I think it just kind of comes naturally to me because like I kind of mentioned earlier, that's like the YouTube channel that I have, for instance, is almost like a diary of sorts.
Yeah.
And also relevant to this whole health issue, blood clot thing. Recently, I've been driven to produce content for one of two reasons. There's either the blood clot stuff that I've been talking about, like just health related stuff,
Hmm.
and that inspiration has come from like wanting to not only share my experience, but like connect with other people that are going through similar things. And it's been really rewarding to see people like interact with the videos and watch the videos that have also had blood clots as well.
Yeah.
Because it can feel quite lonely when you're going through it. So there's been that. And then, yeah, that's been a big driving factor behind things, behind the creativity. And then on the other hand, recently I've been kind of motivated to be vulnerable and to share things because, when I think about like, why do I keep producing videos that
Hmm.
aren't necessarily like monetizing?
Mm.
This is aside from the freelance work that I do. The freelance work is the money making part, and this is like the hobby part. A big motivation has also been kind of tapping into being an uncle out of all things. I'm a new uncle of two nieces
Hmm.
that are just about 1 years old, and then I have a 5-year-old niece as well. And so I think a inspiration behind creativity there is like leaving something that at some point they might be able to see
Yeah.
and they might be able to know and understand me through, and also maybe have some inspiration for their own lives as well. Because I remember like when I was a kid watching my uncle, like he obviously wasn't producing YouTube videos or anything because that didn't exist then. But he would show me photos of his travels to Europe, or he would show me photos of his ski trips. And it just sparked so much like imagination in me because he was one of the few people I knew in my life that like went to distant lands and experienced different cultures and shared about it. So I kind of have that. drive now to leave something for my nieces as well, just to like maybe spark some imagination, some inspiration.
That's funny. My next question was going to be if you had, someone in your family who you were inspired by, like an uncle or a grandpa, but you answered that question. But I guess taking us back to the creative business, you described that you're freelancing and there are challenges that come with that. So I'm curious of any early challenges or learnings that you've had throughout that process.
Challenges with freelancing, I think for me, I guess it's been a lot of psychological little hurdles. And what I mean by that is balancing this urge that I have to go and travel and to kind of live and travel slowly,
Mm.
settle in for one place. And right now I'm in Guatemala and I've been taking
Oh, very nice.
Spanish classes and salsa classes. And so balancing that with, making money and making a living is sometimes a challenge
Mm.
because especially in the US, there's just such a, well, one, it's expensive, so you kind of need to hustle a little bit. And two, there's like a whole hustle culture thing, right? So if I reflect on my freelance work with those voices in mind of like what you should be doing to grow your business, I'm probably not doing the best job. Like I could have a lot more clients. I could be scaling and maybe hiring video editors under me and
Mm.
these different types of things. And that pressure or that kind of self-talk is always there that maybe I should be hustling more, but trying to balance that with, again, the idea that I'm not somebody that's a super hustler type person. I'm not really driven by money that much. Like I'm driven by experience. And so that is a challenge because I find myself often, you know, going back and forth. Like, should I be working more? Should I be working harder? Should I be doing different things to like grow and get more clients and like save money and invest, and then battling that with the idea of just like being and living and appreciating and soaking things in. So that's definitely been a challenge in terms of, you know, work-life balance.
Yeah. I I guess to me it sounds like maybe it's a little bit of a battle of, why you got into doing this kind of work and it affording you some of the lifestyle aspects that you were looking for. And then also the, yeah, I guess the urge to push business or make it grow. And for the past couple of years, I've been trying to tackle the notion that like businesses need to grow to survive. I've met a couple of people who have said that they just need to change or keep up with the times or, I guess
Mhm.
like grow forward, not necessarily get bigger. So I definitely connect to what you're saying about, like, do I need to scale? Like having this voice in the back of your head where you're thinking about all of the things that could make it better, but then, what is the reality? What do you actually want to be doing? And I think from a number of people I've heard that, once they start scaling a business, then it can kind of take off and become a thing where their role looks a lot different than, their skill set or the things that they're personally interested in. And so I've heard of a lot of people scaling it back. So I guess it sounds like a pretty natural process to me, right? Like
Mhm.
if you were to hire other video editors, then you would be a manager, right? So it's like, I don't know, just kind of an interesting way to think about skills and whatnot.
Oh, totally. There was I don't know who was talking about it, but there was some artist that was in the music industry that I remember hearing talking about this subject where it's like at some point, if you want to be big, I don't know if they said like you're no longer a musician, but at some
Mm,
point you're a business person,
for sure.
right? And music is just like the business that you do. But first and foremost, you become a business person, which I
Mm,
think is the reality in most cases. But I really resonate with what you said, where it's like, I question the idea that you need to grow just for growth's sake. You need to be as big as possible. I don't typically resonate with that. I think if you can live a life where you can sustain yourself and like if you want that pressure, then go for it. But if you don't, then have the freedom to scale it back. To me, I think seems ideal.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's something that again, particularly in the US, it's a battle that comes up, I think, for a lot of creative people, how to express that creativity, not get lost in the sauce of being a manager or being a business person or a salesperson.
Yeah, I I feel like content creation, or I guess video in particular, I've seen some Reddit threads or different things where people challenge the idea that it is creative work, right? There's that, I think it was a in a newspaper or some sort of writing in a journal that someone did where they challenged the idea that photography is art because you're just capturing things that already exist or whatnot. And
Mm,
it's like one of my least favorite arguments personally, because I feel like art and commerce have how there have always been a kind of a relationship between them. And in my opinion, I think you need one of three things. You need an audience, you need a client, or you need a boss in order to make creative work and to keep it fulfilling and to like be able to pay your bills and whatnot. The money has to come from somewhere. And so
mhm.
I I don't know. I think that creative integrity is something that means a lot to me, but it's also, I don't think that a creative person being business savvy or focused on the business aspect necessarily needs to take away from creativity. That was, I guess, just a personal tangent that I had. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. I think it doesn't need to take away from the creativity, and it ultimately, I don't know if I'd say it shouldn't.
Mm,
I mean, again, if you want to be a business person and your art is just kind of the avenue to conduct business, and that's where your mindset perspective is, then I think that's great. But I don't think it absolutely needs to be. And there's a lot of respect, I think, that goes into people that can find a really good balance for themselves,
mm,
where they're creative, they're creating their art, and they're finding ways to let the business kind of happen, to get the clients to sell pieces or to sell whatever their art is,
mm.
and not need to go full on into scaling like a big business that makes them lose their creativity. Yeah, I think that's a very important thing.
With your personal content, it's kind of the more art side of your creativity, right? Like you can explore whatever ideas. You said that it's not monetized yet. Is monetization a goal that you have for your personal content, or are you kind of like keeping it strictly in a hobby space?
I think I am somewhere in between on those two things. Like
Okay.
monetization isn't the goal to the point where it's a failure if I don't monetize it.
Mm,
And it's not the driving factor so much so that like that's all I'm thinking about. It would be amazing to have that part of my life also monetize and be sustainable financially and not just do freelance work for other clients, because both of those provide a lot of creativity.
mm-hmm,
But like I mentioned before, I think a big driving factor is, less so the monetization and more about sharing and expressing ideas. So yeah, it's kind of a goal. It would be nice. Like when I do make things, I am somewhat thinking about like, will this be something that people want to watch? And I'm trying to balance that with, is this something that I just simply want to talk about?
mm.
So yeah, it's a goal, but it's not the biggest driving factor for sure.
Okay, yeah. I guess going back to the vulnerability conversation as well, it sounds like you're vulnerable in a way where maybe you find that it could help other people or connect with other people, and maybe those other aspects of your life you're like I can keep that for myself, and I'm still putting a lot of really good stuff out there. Do you connect to that?
Yeah, I think the vulnerability with the health stuff has been, in an effort to share and connect with people that are going through the same experience. And there are, there could be more vulnerability in other topics that I make or I talk about. And I'm not even like, it's not that I'm purposefully like, there are things that I don't want to talk
Mm,
about. I think for the most part, I think I could be pretty open about a lot of things. Like it's nice to share and connect with people on a lot of different things. Finding the timing and the audience and just the capacity to make everything that I want to make sometimes is a bit of a challenge.
Mm,
Like I guess as an example, I've been recently thinking about going in a slightly different direction or just creating things that I haven't created before, but have always been in my mind for a really long time
mm,
that have to do with like psychedelic journeys that I've taken. And that stuff can be very vulnerable for obvious reasons. And I think I'd be very open to sharing all of that. So I'm just kind of navigating like when is the right time? When do I have the capacity to make those things? How do I want to present it? Especially on this topic, like I want to be very intentional with how I share those things.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think there's more vulnerability and openness to go into, and I'm willing to do that, but I think it's just about making sure it feels right at the same time.
interesting. My next question was going to be about how you approach doing this kind of work for clients versus yourself. And so, I guess going off of that, the interesting thing about doing your own content is that I feel like there's the headspace of what you want to say, and there's a lot of intention that goes into, I guess, like making your own videos because like, you're controlling all aspects of it. Versus if you're working with clients, you're getting a lot of footage, or you're also executing sometimes someone else's vision. But
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges behind freelance work or working for clients is you do have a little bit less creative freedom with things. I've had a number of experiences where, probably a lot of freelancers have this, but somebody will say they'll give you the reins and say, I want you to come up with something, right? So in the past, it's been photography. I was doing photography work in the past, or like creating video content from scratch. And they'll give you the reins to be creative. But because your client is running a business,
mm,
and they have their eyes on everything, they have their vision for things, even though they give you or they say they give you the creative reins to do whatever you want and whatever you think works. There's a lot of occasions where they're kind of micromanaging
mm,
things, and you'll present them with a draft. And of course, as a freelancer, you're always open to taking feedback and like making corrections because that's what they're paying for. But there's some kind of like blurry line where you present them with drafts, and they'll say they want certain things changed,
mm-hmm.
even though you had a very specific intention behind why you did something that you did. And sometimes you may not necessarily agree with like why they want something changed and if that will make the video quote unquote better and if there is an objective better to begin with. And that can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. As a creative person to like put your heart into something, your imagination into something and to create and then have somebody want to make sometimes what seems like these little changes that aren't necessarily going to make anything better,
Mm,
right? That can be a little bit of a challenge, I think, and it can be difficult to navigate that sometimes. And I think also it's tricky to navigate that where they say they give you the creative reins, but then they're kind of like micromanaging a lot of the process instead of just the outcome. So that's one challenge. I think that the way to get past that challenge is just to be as upfront about things as possible.
yeah.
So at some point I started to tell clients like first, I'd usually when I work on something, I'd prefer to work on a longer term project. So instead of just like producing one video, for instance, can I find a client that needs help producing 10 or 20 videos over the course of a month or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
So you have more things that you're creating and you're working on, and they can be judged as a project instead of just like one piece of content. And then also communicating that I'd like to be judged on my work based on once we have this body of work and it's been put out there, what's the feedback from people? Like, is it effective? Do people resonate with it? Does it convey whatever message they want to convey? As opposed to like if you don't go in with that expectation, sometimes that's when the client will start judging you based on like, yeah, but I want to change this clip out, or I want this color, or I want to use this font. And it's like we
Mm.
don't even know if that will make the video perform any better. We don't know if that will necessarily resonate with anybody any more than this other way of doing it, right? It's just maybe your personal preference. And yeah, I think as a creative person that can get a little bit tricky. So being upfront about being judged on like a body of work rather than just the little details of one piece of work is really helpful.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I definitely connect to that. My work now is client based, and in the beginning of my career, I found it really emotionally challenging to like handle feedback. I feel like I was a people pleaser,
Totally.
and hearing criticism is like is a really important part of the creative process. And I think I've read Rick Rubin's book. For some reason, I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but he talks about the importance of kind of speaking from your point of view artistically, and like that being an important part of what you're doing, but also collaborating with others, and sometimes like creating something that is not something you would make just on your own or the other person would, but it does become kind of, if they're A, you're B, it becomes C kind of a thing. And
Hmm.
I think for me personally, it helped me develop in areas outside of work too, where I found that I was able to have conversations with, partners or friends that maybe were a bit more difficult before, or I could handle criticism a bit more because I'm like, okay, I'm focusing, it's not me, it's this problem or this behavior or this, design. It's not, it's almost there, but it's not quite resonating with people in the way that I want it to be. And so, once again, just a personal tangent for you, Brandon.
No, I love that because I resonate with that so much, and I think a lot of creative people probably do,
Mm.
right? Like I definitely can be guilty of being a people pleaser as well, especially if you're trying to keep clients or gain new clients, right? Like
For sure. Oh, yeah.
I talking to other friends that are artists or artistic in some various forms, like I think that's so common, right? Is like just trying to get the work and relinquishing a lot of creativity and a lot of your personal touch and your personal conviction over things because you don't want to lose something, which
Mm.
is the paid client. That's a huge like emotional hurdle to get over, And I think speaking to, the book that you're talking about, I think that's Rick Rubin is very inspiring because that is his value, right? Like he talks openly about his value being his taste
Yeah.
and his opinion and his conviction or confidence about his taste and his opinion. And I think it's in order to get to that point where people really value you for that, you have to at some point be assertive
Yeah.
and you have to be willing to lose clients. And in the case of like a freelancer, for instance, go through periods where you have no clients because you're saying no to a bunch of people.
Hmm.
And that can be really scary, obviously, when you're trying to sustain your life, right? So I'm curious though, how has that process been for you? Like what's helped you overcome those tendencies of like, let's say people pleasing or giving up creativity for the sake of keeping clients?
Mm. Okay. If I'm speaking honestly, I guess two things come to mind. So the first is I've seen the effects of what happens when I'm not sharing my voice or I'm not being assertive. So I've had a couple of cases where the design wasn't, I'm creating like graphic design websites, that kind of thing. I created something and I'm like, ugh, like I don't like it. And there's like nothing worse presenting work you don't like to another person because you're like, oh, I was too in my head about what they wanted. So I made something that I thought that they wanted, but it just falls flat because it doesn't, I'm not putting in my point of view or my taste. And I've I've had a couple of instances like that where, I almost lost a client, or I had an experience where I was called not creative in a meeting where I'm presenting work, and like there's like for a creative it's just like I can't really think of anything worse than that. And I feel like, I guess experiences that have made me like kind of take a look at myself and figure out, like, am I a creative person? Like, can I do these things? And I'm like, okay, the most important thing is for me to share my point of view and put all that I have into the work that I do. And I guess the second part of my answer to your question is, I think finding avenues for my own personal creativity where I there aren't really any constraints on it. I'm just kind of creating because I want to, and like that is fulfilling in a way that makes everything else feel energized. And that's something that I've seen a couple of graphic designers talk about as well. Where I guess if you're looking to your client work as being the only source of creativity, like it's gonna fall short, and it's important to have personal projects on the side. And sometimes personal projects become your main thing, or sometimes they can change form as well. But I think, finding fun ways to explore, like collaging or making a sign for your apartment or something. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that would be my answer to your question. I'm curious if you have found anything that's helped you.
I think, well, so from what you said, a big way that you've been able to kind of really express your creativity in the face of potentially losing out on something has been these examples, for instance, when you were called not creative,
Yeah, basically failing.
failing, yeah,
Yeah.
as a kind of a big wake up call to stick to your guns and to like stick to your own conviction and insert your personal touch.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
That sounds like a big, it's often those emotions that we feel like failure or embarrassment or just being put on the spot like that, or that kind of serve as wake up calls, and I think give you the guts to like move forward in a different direction.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. For me, I think it would be things that are kind of similar. I'm trying to think if I have something that's a moment like you described, because that moment that you described, even though it was very short and simple, like I could feel that.
Yeah.
Like somebody you do something and somebody's like you're not creative and you value being a creative person,
Yeah.
and for somebody to say that to you would like really not feel good in that moment. And I could see how it like lights a fire to make you say, okay, I'm not going to just like produce something purely for somebody else. Like I'm going to put my own taste into something.
Yeah. I guess I also was thinking about how, we started off in different careers. I studied psychology, which is an interesting field. There's so many things you can do with psychology. But when I went through that training, it was very scientific and research based. And there's subjectivity to psychology. There's like a little bit of a blend between psychology and philosophy, but it took me a long time to take down some of the mental barriers I had about things needing to be correct or right. You know, like you were saying, when you're making these videos with clients, there are so many different ways that a video could be right or better. There's a level of subjectivity to it. And I think that's where taste comes in, where you need to kind of stake your claim and give your recommendation or put your best foot forward. But it is based on you and your own experiences and your own opinions about what is good. So that's just another thought to add on to that. But the question that we talked about before, we were talking about what you've done to overcome kind of challenges with clients, right?
Yeah, to overcome challenges with clients in terms of creativity. I think I mentioned that it's about setting expectations, or for me, it's been about setting expectations up front. And the big one was like when I present you work, judge me on the results of a body of work, right? Not only does that benefit me as a creative person, like I don't have to feel micromanaged. I
Mm,
feel like I can do things that make sense to me, that feel right to me to complete a project. But I think it also helps the client as well.
mm,
And that's something that I think a lot of clients don't realize from the get-go. I think it's something that maybe they need help being made aware of, which is, if I'm creating, let's say I'm creating a video for you, I'm editing a video, coming up with the idea from scratch, putting in B-roll, writing the script, whatever it is. And this client is coming in saying like I want to swap out this and I think this would be better and all of these different things. Again, every client has the right to have a finished product that they like, obviously.
Yeah.
So not taking away from that. But it does become a little bit muddy when we have the finished product and we're seeing how it's performing, and neither of us are really clear, or it's not immediately clear why, let's say, for instance, a video doesn't perform well or it doesn't resonate with people. Were those things because of decisions that I made,
Hmm.
or were they decisions that the client made? We don't know, right? Like I had a vision for something, I had something that made sense, and I had intention behind every little cut and every little change that I made. And then somebody came in and said, I want to change all of these bits and pieces of it. It is a little bit unclear, like what part of the video doesn't work well,
Mm.
especially nowadays with like short form content. Is my vision of the first 1 to 3 seconds of the video going to perform better or theirs? Like it's uncertain. And the more we're kind of like mashing our ideas together, the more confusing it gets.
Mm.
As opposed to if the client gives the creative person all of the creative freedom, they finish a body of work and then they judge the outcomes on that. And let's say hypothetically, the videos don't perform well. They don't reach the goals that the client had. Well, then the client has the luxury of saying, well, it I guess this person isn't a good fit for us, right? This creative person didn't create something that resonated with our
Mm.
audience. And it's very clear from that point. So they can then make a decision that's easy to say, maybe we need to find a different creative to work with, as opposed to this situation where it's like, well, but it could have worked better if we did it this way.
Mm.
But these our ideas started to mesh together and clash. And yeah, I think it's just a big roundabout way of saying if you give the creative person all of their creative freedom and then judge the outcome afterwards, then the client has an easier time of deciding if the creative was a good fit for them or not.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
And so being upfront with them about that before you enter into a new contract or start a new project can be so helpful. And I love it because it comes from a perspective of like, this isn't just about me and wanting to be selfish and like have full control. It also helps you. Like it just makes things so much clearer for you as the
Hmm.
client. And I think it makes life more enjoyable for everybody.
Awesome answer. Okay, and then my last question for you, which I a little bit wish I had asked a couple more things about your travels because I'm sure you have a ton of stories, which maybe, you'll probably share in your own content so people can go out and watch that. But I'm curious what your, I guess, most impactful travel experience has been in the past couple of years.
Ooh, most
Yeah.
impactful.
I can change the question if it's tricky.
Maybe because I get asked a lot, like, what's your favorite place that you've been to?
Yeah.
And I travel a lot. If it wasn't clear, it's a very important part of my life. I get asked a lot, yeah, what's your favorite place? And it's so hard to pick. Every single travel experience that I've had has been impactful in its own unique
Mm.
way. So it's really hard to pick just one. And I think a big part of that is because when I use the word travel, I think a lot of times people think of like going to Paris and then you go see the Eiffel Tower and you go see the Louvre and you like do all of the things that you're quote unquote supposed to do when you take a trip to Paris.
Hmm.
But my travels have been when I was seeing someone flying across to Eastern Europe and like living with them there for 3 months. And then here in Guatemala, it's been a completely different intention, coming here to like learn Spanish and connect with, you know, that side of my family's heritage. I'm half Mexican, so there's that link, but my family doesn't speak the language. So me learning the language is an attempt to connect to another part of myself.
Mm.
So, if you were to ask like, oh, between those two, which was better? That's a really hard decision to make. They're both amazing in their own completely unique ways that I don't know if I could pick just one.
That's okay.
But yeah, but I think that is how, kind of going back to a question you asked earlier, like that's how these trips, these travel experiences have impacted creativity as well. Is like they've just been unique chapters of life.
Mm.
And I think when you put yourself in a new place with intention, and it's just all of this newness coming up and unique life experiences, I think that that always is in some way going to inform creativity. It's always going to inspire different aspects of creativity.
All right, awesome. Where can people find you?
They can find me on, well, they can find me on YouTube at Mindful
Hmm.
Wanderer. That's the handle. And they can also find me at brandonrkh.com, which is my freelance website.
Awesome. I will put, I said awesome like three times in the past like 5 minutes, but I will put the links to those in the description for this episode. So any of you listening can find Brandon. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Jamie, it was so good to see you again. I'm really glad we got to talk.
Me too.